Hi guys, in this episode of Shri series, we're going to continue part 2 of precipitation reactions, alright? So in the previous video, I gave you an example of what a precipitation reaction is. So I'm just going to recap from there and then we're going to look at this question above, alright? So like I mentioned before, a precipitation reaction is a reaction where one of the products becomes a precipitate, which is a solid aggregate, alright? It's solid in nature and can be in different colors, alright? Now, let's look at this question first and then we'll take you through a step-by-step process to work through this problem. So the question states, write the net ionic equation for the precipitation reaction between lead 2 nitrate and sodium iodide. Now you can see here in this question they haven't even told you the reaction, they haven't told you the chemical formulas of lead 2 nitrate and sodium iodide. You need to know this by now. Alright, so when you're doing questions, especially precipitation reactions, you need to be familiar, alright, with writing the chemical formula and also balancing chemical equations or chemical reactions in this case. All right, so let's write down the reaction here between lead 2 nitrate and sodium iodide. Okay, so lead 2 nitrate is PbNO3 plus NaI, and my products are going to be NaNO3 plus PbI2. All right, so these are my reactants and these are my products. Okay, now I want to find out, is my equation balanced? All right, I've got I2 there, so I'll put 2 there and I'm going to put 2 there. All right, so we need to ask ourselves, is the lead on my left and right balanced? It is. Is my NO3 left and right balanced? Is 2 Na balanced and 2 I's balanced? All right, so my equation is balanced. The next thing we need to do is to write down the appropriate state symbol. All right, and if you looked at my previous video on precipitation, you would have known that I mentioned before that you need to be absolutely familiar with your solubility rules, because that will tell you whether any chemical is either a solid, liquid, gas, or a precipitate. All right, so if you look at lead 2 nitrate, you know very well all nitrates are soluble, therefore lead 2 nitrate becomes an aqueous solution. All right, iodides. Sodium iodide is an aqueous solution, and like I mentioned before, all nitrates are soluble, so that's also going to be an aqueous solution, and lead 2 iodide becomes a precipitate, right? And if you actually carry out this reaction, you will see a yellow precipitate, so PPT for precipitate. So you need to be very familiar with your state symbols, particularly when you are talking or solving equations involving precipitation reactions. I was able to recognize that lead 2 iodide is a precipitation reaction because iodides, particularly lead iodide, are form precipitates. All the others are soluble. All right, now we need to find the net ionic equation. So if you saw my previous videos, the first thing we need to do is to ionize only aqueous solutions. All right, so if you see here, what do we do? Pb becomes Pb2 plus and NO3 2 minus plus 2 Na plus and 2I minus to produce 2 Na plus and 2 NO3 minus plus PbI2. All right, so we've ionized all the reactants and products except PbI2, lead 2 iodide, because that is the only solid here. All right, the next step is we need to get rid of the spectator ions, because these are the ions that appear both on your reactants as well as your product side. They do not take part in the precipitation reaction. As the word says or suggests, they simply spectate. All right, so what I'll do is I'm going to get my NO3 2 minus, because that's what's there as well, my 2 Na plus, because that's what's there, and finally my answer or my net ionic equation becomes Pb2 plus 2I minus to produce PbI2. All right, so that now becomes an aqueous solution. That's an aqueous solution, and that now forms my solid precipitate. And that tells you that you've got one reactant Pb, 2 plus is an aqueous, 2I minus is an aqueous. They react together to form PbI2, which becomes a solid, and this therefore is my net ionic equation. All right, so in this example, we've looked at net ionic equations, we've looked at precipitation reactions. We know that a precipitation reaction is a reaction where one of the products is a precipitate. You need to be absolutely familiar with your solubility rules, and then the first step in working out net ionization reactions is, or equations, is to ionize, as the name suggests, is to split the aqueous ions into positive and negative, get rid of the spectator ions, and the final reactants and products form your net ionic equations. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye now.